Welcome back to another episode of Harmonious at Lunch, the show that fuels your business success. I'm Bryan Clayton, your host and guide through the world of harmonious business growth. Today, we're unlocking powerful strategies with industry experts to help your business thrive. If you're a business owner, entrepreneur, or executive, you are in the right place. Join me and our incredible guests today on the journey to clarity, growth, and success. It is time to revolutionize your approach to business. Let's dive in with another episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Welcome back to another episode. We got some more bite-sized business advice today. And one of my favorite episode styles is always the one we have lined up today. It is the success story, or the journey story, if you will, of a successful entrepreneur. And we're going to hear behind the scenes what it takes to grow a company in an industry that he wasn't familiar with at the beginning. And I think that's even cooler. So the bumps along the road, the lessons, the learnings, all those beautiful things. I have Bryan Clayton with me, founder and CEO of GreenPal. And Bryan, before we go any further, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Hey, what's up, Brandon? Thanks for having me on, man. It's great to be here.
I'm excited about this because it's so full disclosure, I haven't heard of your company before we met here. And it's one of the coolest ideas I think I've ever heard of, because you're disrupting an industry, and you're also making an industry easier to access for the customer and the service provider. So give me, in your words, give me the background of what is GreenPal.
Yeah, so GreenPal is a marketplace. It's an online app that works like DoorDash or Instacart or Uber, but for lawn care services. So if you have a rent or own a home and you have a yard, you need to get somebody to mow the yard for you, rather than calling around on Facebook or Craigslist or something like that. You just download GreenPal, you pop your address in, someone comes out and takes care of the lawn for you. And GreenPal is a 10-year overnight success. My two co-founders and I have been at this for a little over a decade. Now around 300,000 people using the app to get lawn mowing services done on a weekly basis. And before I started GreenPal, I actually had a landscaping business. I started mowing grass when I was a teenager in high school, and little by little grew that into a large landscaping company with about 150 employees ultimately, and sold it about year 15. And after I sold that business, I took about a year off and decided, what am I going to do now? And I thought, well, maybe I'll build a marketplace that works like Uber does, because at the time Uber was just getting rolling, and Uber was kind of the inspiration for how GreenPal would work, and used what they were doing for ride sharing and applied it for this industry that I knew, lawn mowing. And the challenging part was executing on the technology side of it, executing on the marketplace side of it. But little by little, just through trial and error and going from one failure to the next, we kind of figured out how to build a marketplace that would satisfy buyers and sellers and make it easier to transact with our platform than it was the old way. And now we're a decade in, and it's still very much day one. We want to get to 1 million people using it, but we finally have something that works, that people get value from.
Yeah, I love that story, and I think you make it sound so easy, but both of your accomplishments here with these two separate businesses are not common. I mean, if you look at the traditional landscaping company, I would say, and you probably know better than me, but 80% of landscaping companies are one or two guys with a mower and a weed whacker. To have 150 employees and scale to multiple millions in revenue, that's uncommon. So I want to go back there for a minute. Like, you obviously, that was not an overnight success either. What are some of the things that you learned along that journey before you sold the company?
Yeah, landscaping business is an awesome business to get started in, to kind of cut your teeth on what it means to run a small business, because you can learn 80% of what goes into running any kind of business in a service-based business like that. So things like bookkeeping and customer service and marketing and just business 101 and what goes into pulling a business together, you can learn in the landscaping business. And that's one of the beautiful things about it. And you can keep it small and profitable. There's nothing wrong with that. You can keep it just you and a helper, or you and 2 or 3 people. I know a lot of blue collar millionaires that did just that kept their little landscaping business really lean and mean and tight, and they invested in real estate and things like that, and they retired at 40. And so that's a path to success. You don't have to grow a big company in that industry to be successful in it. but I had a chip on my shoulder in the early days of running that business. I really wanted to build a big company in the industry. For some reason, I just felt like I could build an industry-leading business in my market, and so I set out to do that, and I made a little business plan to do that. And some of the things I learned along the way, maybe about year 4, 5, or 6, was that I wasn't in the landscaping business at all. I was actually in the sales business, and I had to figure out a way to architect a sales engine at the core of what my business was. That the landscaping was kind of just table stakes. That the really what our driver of success was prospecting and connecting our customers with the value that we delivered. Took a while to figure that out, and it took a while to design and execute on that process. But once I figured that out and got the people kind of in the right roles and got that humming, that was I able to take the business from like $1 million in revenue to 3 to 4 to 5, ultimately $10 million a year in revenue, and then get it to a point where a national company would want to acquire it. Took a lot of trial and error there, and when I sold the business, I thought, okay, here I am. I just built and sold an 8-figure contracting business. I know everything there is to know about business success. And then I was quickly humbled when I started GreenPal. I realized you don't know the first thing about this type of business. And it was even though I was a second-time founder, I was very much a first-time founder all over again, starting GreenPal. There were so many things I had to learn all over again. Yeah, there were some common denominators, some lessons did carry over, but most everything I had to learn all over again. So it was kind of like a very humbling experience. It was exactly what I needed at the time. But I think if you're throwing everything you have into a business, you should evolve into an entirely new person every year or two. And that was one of the things I noticed about the first company, and definitely one of the things I noticed about the second company, GreenPal. I was evolving into a whole new person every year or two, and that's one of the things I love about it.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting point. I wanted to touch on that because so we typically work with our clients are 7, 8-figure businesses. They have a team, they have a bunch of employees, 5 to 50-ish employees when we start working with them. And the one commonality we always find is that the owner, founder, CEO, whatever you want to call them, is the bottleneck to the
Yeah.
business. And they've gotten themselves to a point where, they've grown to, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4 million, but they're still in the way of making decisions. So when you say you have to reinvent yourself or learn new skills, how soon did you figure out that, okay, I've gotten this thing to, let's say, upper 6 figures, low 7 figures in revenue. I need to be in a different role, and I also need to build systems and put other people in the right roles. Like, what was that process like for you? And then what are the things you did to reinvent yourself at that time?
Yeah, there's never been a situation where I was in the way and I had to get out of the way and put somebody else in the role. It was a situation where I was underdeveloped and I needed to develop, learn, execute at a higher level, develop the process and put somebody in the process.
Mm.
And so what I mean by that, so it's kind of a fallacy, and and I think kind of like almost like a wish of small business owners of, oh well, I just need to like hire the right people and then I'll just magically like they will carry me to success. And that never happens. Like
Show me the path, please.
yeah, like that never happens because like that those type of people are going to not want to come work for you. They're not they're going to be able to understand. They're not going to want to work for somebody less talented than them. And so you as the founder have to develop yourself to a higher level, and then you attract those type of people who can execute your system, your vision, at a very specific level that you kind of set them on. And so what I mean by that is in the first business, like it wasn't like I just hired a rock star salesperson and they just took the sales process and ran with it. No, it was I beat my head against the wall and figured out what our sales process was and learned and developed my sales skills and learned and developed what our value proposition was. And then I was able to go find somebody who I knew was good at sales. I taught them the industry and I plugged them into my system that I built. And it wasn't until I developed those skills from within was I able to then do that and then I could focus on operations and other things and kind of rinse and repeat and do that over here. Same thing with GreenPal. I tried when we first started. I didn't know how to build software. I didn't know how to code. I didn't know how to develop software. And so I tried to hire somebody to do that. And same thing. It was a big failure because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't get the best. They saw that I was a layman, and they took advantage of that. And so I had to go back to the drawing board, go to YouTube University, learn how to become a halfway decent engineer, and then kind of like build the first version myself, my co-founder and I. And then we could then attract good quality developers and engineers to work around us and build it from the ground up that way. So I think anytime you're trying to build out a team and you're trying to delegate from a position of abjuration, meaning I don't know how to do this, you take it, run with it, and go get successful with it. I think that's always going to blow up in your face. I think you have to delegate from a standpoint of stewardship, which is here's how I want you to do this. Here's what I expect. Here's what success looks like. Here's how I once did something similar, or how I once did it. Here's how long we think it should take, and here's how we gauge success. Now you go do it. I think that's a much better position to have success to delegate somebody with. Now, yeah, there's examples like, I just got done watching the Shoe Dog movie about Nike and Michael Jordan, and you look at like how much faith Phil Knight put in Matt Damon's character to make that deal happen. And I'm sitting there watching like, damn, I wish I had my Matt Damon. That'd be awesome to have somebody go run a deal like that for me. I think a lot of that was probably like glamorized. It probably wasn't like that. So you have to be careful with like these mythological stories that you hear. And so just the allure and the myth that you're just going to like hire your way to ultimate success, especially at the small business level. No, you as the founder have to execute and develop the system. You have to grow, and then you have to plug people into that system.
Yeah, that's such a good tip too. And I think the one thing that's ruined most movies for me is as soon as it's over, I Google like the real story.
Yeah.
It says like based on true events. I'll Google what was the real story of the Michael Jordan movie or the Nike movie. And then you're like, oh, that was all a lie. There was like 1% of it that was true.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
what I love is this conversation is real. It's raw. You can hear actual stories of what takes place. I agree with everything you said. I mean, you can't hire somebody and expect them to save you if you're not willing to put in some sort of an effort and either teach them or empower them to go learn too. It's this myth that we have in small business and entrepreneurship. And it's crazy. I've seen it firsthand. Actually, I remember you just brought back to mind my first job ever. I was like 13 or 14. And the owner of the business just wanted other people to make him money. And it was a disaster. Like nothing ever went well. That company ended up going bankrupt and closing, because that's just not how you run and grow a business. So I love that you said, no, definitely not. And I love that you've done it twice the right way. There's something to be said about that. So then let's look over now what you're doing. You said in your words, you were humbled when you started GreenPal, which is interesting because it's a total different industry. It's a software product. You were in landscaping. And when you're tackling this project, I'm sure there was some sort of that chip still on your shoulder. What was that? Like, what was wrong with the industry that you wanted to build this product now?
Yeah, I tried to kind of, well, not retire because I was only like 32 years old, so I was a young man, but I tried to kind of live the good life almost, and I don't even know what that was supposed to be, but I didn't want to go back to work every day, and because it almost killed me running that first business and growing it to 150 people and then trying to get it acquired. It was really, really challenging. And so I didn't want to do that again. But I tried to take a year off, and it got really existential very quickly that I didn't have a mission. There was no reason to like get out of bed in the morning and go crush it. And you can only do so much like passive investing, and you can only do so much real estate investing and things like that. And so I needed like a reason, like the answer to the question, if I didn't get out of bed today, why would it matter? And if it wasn't for me, like then what? And so I thought, well, what should I do? And And to your earlier point about movies, I had watched the movie The Social Network, and like that was a really cool movie, and it was very inspiring to me that these kids could build something that touched millions of people, and 99% of that movie is probably dramatized BS. It was still a really neat to see that, and I thought, well, what if I could do that in some small way in this world that I know, this blue collar world that I know, because I saw running a landscaping business every single day how difficult it was for homeowners that needed a basic service to get connected with smaller service providers. Because as I grew that business to be a big company, we no longer did residential services. We no longer did the $29 lawn mowing. But people would still call our office every day, hundreds of them. Hey, will you come mow my yard? Will you come? And we would have to like refer them to smaller service providers. So in effect, we were kind of like this analog referral service. And so I knew that an app could do that much quicker, much easier, much more efficient. And so I thought, well, somebody's going to build it. It might as well be me. And I knew it was going to be hard. I just didn't know, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I guess that was good, because if I'd known how challenging it was going to be, I never would have done it in a million years. But I made a decision that I guess, well, I tried to kind of like hang it up. And I guess from now on, no matter what, I'm going to work on my best idea, whatever that is. And so in conjunction with that, I'm not terribly creative. I don't have a whole lot of good ideas hanging around. I've had one good idea in 10 years, and that is an app should exist where you should be able to hire a lawn mowing service in 60 seconds, even if your grass is 4 feet tall. That was the one good idea, and I've been working on that for a decade. And so I thought, well, let's just start working on it. And the first year we got nowhere. And then like the second year, we set a goal to try to get 100 people to use it. That ended up taking 2 years. And then so it was like 4 years before we launched our second market. And then I think it was 5 years before we had our third market. And then maybe 6 years before we had 1,000 people using it. So it was a very, very slow build. But because I had made the decision personally that, I don't care how long it takes. I'm just going to work on this until we can get it working. And I also had seen that, the numbers were small, but they were growing. And that if compounding would just take hold, 100 would be 200, 200 would be 400. And I knew it was just only a matter of time. Admittedly, what I thought would take 2 years ended up taking 10. But what the hell else was I going to do? I had made a decision. I was going to work on my best idea. So that clarified a lot of my thinking, and it eliminated a lot of bright, shiny object syndrome.
Which I think most people lack. They lack that clarity and focus, and that's why most companies stop. At whatever point they stop, that's where they stay. Whether
Right.
they get sold or they close or they go out of business, everything starts to look like a good idea, but most people lack that focus. So I'm just curious, because you've done this before. You've grown a massive company. You've sold it. This one, you're 10 years in, and it seems like you have a lot of traction with 300,000 users. You're nationwide. First of all, do you have a plan to go internationally, or is this just the United States?
Yeah, ultimately, so when we started this, I wanted to build something, my co-founders and I both, because the reason I recruited them as co-founders, they had a chip on their shoulder just like I did, that we all wanted to build something that could touch the mass market. And you mentioned when we started the podcast, man, I've never heard of this thing. And so that's what we're trying to fix now. It's like we're the world's most unknown known, and so, or most known unknown. We need to fix that in terms of it should be in the default way that you get things done, just like Instacart, DoorDash, Uber, Airbnb. It should be in the default list of ways that you do certain things. And so that's what we're going after. And so it probably is smart to stay in the United States until we solve that problem. And 300,000 users is a drop in the bucket for how much grass is getting cut in the United States. And so we have a long way to go. But ultimately, yeah, we want to be in Canada, UK, Australia. Maybe in the next 5 years we'll figure that out. But we have 300 cities that we kind of measure. And there's a weird thing where every single one of them is kind of their own market, and we'll drive more transactions in a small city like Knoxville, Tennessee, than we will in a big city like Seattle, Washington. And so figuring out the nuances of those individual networks and why some spin faster than others is one of the main things that we have to kind of figure out and work on. And until we figure that out, there's no reason to go international. But that's one of the challenges of running a network like this is each individual town is its own network.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I ask partly because we have a very large Australian and New Zealand audience to
Oh,
this
nice.
podcast, which we love you. We love our Kiwis out there. Go New Zealand. But as far as the United States, it makes complete sense. And I hear what you're saying. 300,000 sounds like a big number, but the population of this country is 330 million. So there's obviously a ways to go. And it's not that I haven't heard of your company because I don't respect it and I don't like what you're doing. I'm very particular about who I let touch my grass.
There
So
you go.
I
Nice.
don't know if I'm going to be using it. Just full transparency. I love
Nice.
cutting my grass. It's my hobby on the weekends. I
I
will
dig
definitely
it.
check it out. And I put it on the screen here too. It's in the show notes wherever you're watching or listening. Go check out greenpal.com. See if you can find a reliable landscaper, because I know all of the trades, but particularly this one, anywhere I've lived in the country, I hear a lot of complaints about reliable landscapers. So why don't you go to a trusted source, make your life easier? So I got one last question for you, and that is just, you have this aggressive growth brand. You want to continue to grow in the States, in these smaller markets, in all markets in general. How do you see yourself and your company getting to that million mark in whatever timeline you've established? Like, what are the things that you absolutely need to do as the owner and the founder to put in place for that to be possible?
Yeah, one thing we have to get better at is understanding our own data around how do we leverage the product to drive more positive interactions between buyers and sellers. And one thing we're working on is one thing we call the an instant book feature. So if you remember way back in the old days of Airbnb, if you wanted to book somebody's house or somebody's spare bedroom, you would be like this ping pong thing where you would say, "Hey, is it available?" And they would say, and they would look at your profile picture, and they're like, "No, it's not available," you know, or maybe, it'd be like this weird, like back and forth thing.
Yeah.
I remember it because that's how it was. And now you can like instantly book on Airbnb. And
Mhm.
so with GreenPal, it's still a bid system. And so as a homeowner, you sign up, and you say, okay, this is my yard, this is the square footage, and then contractors around you compete over that, and you get 5 bids in like 60 seconds, and then you come back and you hire one of them, and that's very efficient. It's a lot more efficient than doing it the old way, but still, it'd be nice to just download the app and say, hey, here's 5 contractors that will definitely be there on Thursday in your zip code for $37, and they've committed to that, and we know with 100% certainty that they'll be there. Just hire one of them now. You don't have to wait 5 minutes. And so that's what we're working on, using massive amounts of data, past transactional data, and being able to predict which contractors can fulfill that. And so we feel like that'll be a huge tipping point for us. It's just going to take a lot of work to get there.
That's cool. That sounds like a big project. It sounds like a lot of numbers nerds are going to be very helpful on that. So
yeah. Numbers nerds working on who would have thought lawn mowing, but hey,
yeah, right.
that's that making people's lives a little bit more convenient, but more importantly, helping these small business owners make more money is what we're here for.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's such a cool trajectory. If you're numbers nerds, reach out. Maybe there's a job for you at GreenPal. Reach out to Bryan. Bryan, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story. This was fantastic.
Brandon, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right, and you listening out there, first and foremost, if you have a lawn and you don't love cutting it as much as I do, you go to greenpal.com. It's in the show notes. It's wherever you are. Second thing I need you to do is subscribe, of course, because I love bringing these episodes to you every single day, this bite-sized business advice and these success stories. I do it for you, the listener, and we are here to inspire you to grow your business. And who knows, maybe you're the next success story that comes on this show and has a 150 employee company that they sold for a significant figure. So keep watching, keep listening. We're here for you. We'll see you on the next episode of Harmonious.